Statistical analysis of price elasticity of fuel demand in Nigeria. The lecturer of the day is Dr. TORIOLA of the Department of Economics, Faculty of Management. Can we give him a round of applause? Without wasting time, let me invite the lecturer of the day, Dr. TORIOLA, to come forward to deliver this lecture. You're welcome.
Thank you. The vice of management, the team, the faculty, and co-board, all the HODs, the director of academic planning, HODs, and my colleagues and students. I am Dr. TORIOLA, and I'm presenting a lecture in the Faculty of Management and Social Science seminar titled Statistical Analysis of Price Demand in Nigeria. So, as we all know that when we talk about fuel price, it is now an household issue. Not only issues confronted by the government, it is now what every individual in the nation is feeling the effects even today. So that makes the topic very timely. And in order not to bother us with our usual econometric jargon, so that is why we titled the topic Statistical Analysis of price elasticity of fuel demand. What do we mean by statistical analysis? So, when you look at it, it is a common phenomenon for readers and reviewers of economics papers, particularly those who are not inclined with modeling or econometric modeling. A common phenomenon that they are always bothered about our approach to data analysis. That is, it is too quantitative. So, as such, many a times, the message we are passing across is not getting to the audience. So, we have avoided all those econometric jargon, all those econometric models, that inform our choice on statistical analysis of price elasticity of fuel demand from 1986 to 2024. We all know that when we talk about statistical analysis is limited to measures of central tendency like mean, linear, and mode, measures of dispersion, variance and standard deviation, measures like thickness, kurtosis, among others. In addition to statistical analysis, we also try to look at the correlation, which does not involve any form of advanced econometric modeling. So all this is to provide an important background on the choice of our topic. So although in Nigeria is a net exporter of crude, crude oil is one of the abundant resources that this nation is blessed with. The nation is blessed, but though we are net refined petroleum products. So, in the literature, this is a dilemma because it is expected that when you have abundance of a particular resources, you should be able to make sure that you transform the resources into a final goods. So, but in this country, we have seen that over the years, that Nigeria has not been able to harness that resources in a way that it will be able to transform the resources to a finished final product. So we are exporting the raw food, at the same time, we are now importing the refined product. And this has contributed to the reason why when there's any issues in international markets, any disruptions, any geopolitical events, you will realize that the price of oil will fluctuate upward in most cases. So the price of oil has been fluctuating over some decades in Nigeria. So because of our reliance on refined products. So little wonder why most of the time you will find out that the transportation cost is unstable. You find out that inflation is always on the rise because we as the exporter of food, we are at the same time importing the product from the rest of the world. And when we import, it is the forces of demand and supply in the international market that will determine how much the sellers is going to sell back to us. And this will not dive to the pump price of oil as we are witnessing today. Despite the age-long government intervention, in order to be able to avoid this situation, so that we can have a stable price of oil. Despite this intervention in form of subsidies that have been introduced by different government regimes in Nigeria, the price of oil, the pump price of oil has continued to move vis-a-vis the movement of food in international oil markets. So, meaning that as we are experiencing today, just a geopolitical rivalry event that occurred between the United States of America and Iran, it has created a situation where the pump price of oil has skyrocketed. So this situation amplifies the importance of studying how price fluctuation impacts the overall fuel consumption in Nigeria. So, for instance, the removal of fuel subsidy in Nigeria resulted in 2023 resulted in fuel price slipping, and this contributed to increased cost of transportation and cost of essential items like food. As fuel price increases in economies, we always relate these changes to price elasticity. So if you go back to your senior secondary school economics or undergraduate level economics, you will understand what we mean by price elasticity. Price elasticity measures the degree of responsiveness of demand for a particular good vis-a-vis its own price. So we expect that when the price of the goods changes, there will be changes in demand of that particular goods. According to the law of demand, economists believe that ceteris paribus, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demand for most goods. So, when the pump price of petroleum products increases, our mind goes back to the concept of elasticity of demand. Our interests go back to how of fuel or demand for fuel reacts to these changes. So, we say that the law of demand has exceptions. What are the exceptions? One of the exceptions to the law of demand is goods that are necessities. An example of goods that are necessities is the fuel that we are talking about. In situation whereby you don't have alternative energy sources, though we expect that when price increase, demand should fall. But when there is no alternative sources of energy, when price increase, since fuel is an essential commodity, it is not likely that demand will fall. It is not likely. So this is what this study aims to test. What is the situation? Is it that when fuel price increases, does demand for fuel fall based on the normal goods, based on the common law of demand? Does it fall? Does it remain the same? Does it increase? So this is the subject of the empirical test of this study. So based on that powering knowledge, we expect that demand for fuel in countries without viable alternative energy sources like Nigeria, we expect that demand for fuel will be priced inelastic. That is the expectation. Because if there are several alternatives to fuel, even when price falls, it is likely that the demand for fuel will fall. But because there is no substitute, there is no viable substitute, there is no viable alternatives. So let's look at it. What has been the changes? Does demand fall over the years as price is increasing, or does it remain stable, or does it fall? So several studies have identified the impact of crude oil price increase on inflation and consumption of households. But in the literature, there is scarce evidence of studies analyzing how fuel price affects consumption. How consumption reacts when price of fuel changes. There is sparse studies on this analysis. As such, the aim of this study is to statistically analyze the elasticity of fuel demand, the price elasticity of fuel demand in Nigeria. The supporting objectives are we want to look at the trends of fuel price and fuel consumption in Nigeria. What has been the direction over the years since 1986? How has fuel price been moving and how has fuel consumption been moving? So by looking at this trend, we'll be able to picture, does it move in the same direction or in different direction? Or when one is moving, what is happening to the other? That is what we intend to do with objective 1. In the objective 2, our aim is to examine the association between price changes, fuel price changes, and fuel consumption in Nigeria. So this association will help us to determine if the relationship has been negative over the years or positive over the years. If it is negative, it shows that anytime fuel price increases, the demand for fuel falls. And if it is positive, it shows that anytime fuel price increases, fuel consumption also increases. So, within this study, we'll be able to unravel this fact. So, the conceptual review, when we talk about fuel consumption, in this study we have used fuel consumption interchangeably with fuel demand. So, anywhere you see fuel demand and fuel consumption, we are using it interchangeably. So fuel consumption reflects the energy use pattern that is determined by the income of the people, the prices at which the energy is sold, the infrastructure, and the availability of substitutes. And when we talk about fuel price elasticity, this measures the responsiveness of demand to price of a good. So in this our study, we are trying to measure the responsiveness of demand or consumption to changes in fuel price. So when fuel price changes, what happens to consumption? So by statistical analysis, we mean the analysis that involves purely statistical tools, including descriptive statistics, correlation analysis, and trend analysis, tabular and graphical trend analysis. The theory that this study is anchored on is the classical theory of demand. And what the classical theory states is that the invisible hand of demand and supply should be allowed to dictate price. That there must not be government intervention in the market forces. What people are ready to supply and demand should determine the prices at which the goods is sold in the market. So, the classical theory also submitted that for most goods, increase in prices will lead to a fall in demand. That is the position of the classical theory. So they mention some exceptions, like goods of ostentation, that is luxury goods, goods that are necessities, and goods that are inferior. But in this our analysis, our focus is on goods that by structural design is necessity in Nigeria because there's no viable alternative. So in the literature that was reviewed, studies have shown that fuel prices increase, reduce consumption slightly. There are many evidence that as fuel prices increases, consumption declines slightly. So subsidy removal increases hardship. There are also in that makes such submission that the removal of subsidy as over the year increases hardship because of limited shift to alternative energy sources. As was said, in order not to bother you with our econometric jargon and for simplicity, so that this study, because it affects all segments of the society, can be understood by all, we limited our methodological analysis to the use of statistical tools. In the research design, the study employed quantitative research design, and this design is adopted due to the reliance on annual data that requires a statistical value framework of analysis. So in the model specification, we do not specify any model based on the topic, and we employ purely descriptive statistics covering the central tendency, measures of dispersion, and location of each variable. And we also use correlation analysis to detect the direction of association and the strength of such association among the variables. The data was sourced from secondary source of data, particularly from National Bureau of Statistics, Library, e-Library, and the World Bank World Development Indicator. In the measurement of income, the study utilized real GDP per capita, deflated to constant 2010 US dollar to positive income. And in the measurement of fuel consumption, the study used share of fossil fuel energy consumption as a percentage of total energy consumption. So in measuring the fuel price, the study used the retail price of fuel in the measurement of fuel price. So the estimation techniques covers descriptive statistics which summarize the data set using the central tendency, dispersion, and location of each variable as mentioned earlier. shows that fuel price is much lower than the middle value. This big difference shows that there are some very high values affecting the average, and this is also confirmed by the maximum and the minimum value. The standard deviation shows is very large, meaning fuel price have changed a lot over the period of analysis. At least 1986 to 2022. So fuel price have changed a lot. The students show that prices are heavily stayed towards the very high value that this fuel price has been going upward. This indicates the presence of extreme spikes or outlier. If the variable normality shows that the variable does not follow a normality. For fuel consumption, the average is 50.92 with median, and they are very close, implying that fuel consumption is evenly distributed over the period of analysis. The value ranges from 42.39 to 58.23, which is, and standard deviation is small, showing that consumption does not change over the period, that much over the period of analysis. So the hypothesis suggests that there are no extreme values. So the temporal statistics indicate that consumption of fuel is normally distributed. The correlation analysis revealed that fuel consumption and fuel price have direct association. By direct association, it means that as fuel price increases, fuel consumption has over the years been increasing in Nigeria. This is a telling, and this confirms the fact that in Nigeria there is no viable alternative substitute for fuel, and this has led the people to continue to demand for fuel even as the price of fuel continue to rise. So there's a positive relationship, that is a default, between fuel price and fuel consumption. So also there's a positive relationship between fuel consumption and income, meaning that as the income of the people is increasing, you know, when the income increases, many people will demand for motor vehicle, which will increase demand for fuel. So as fuel price increases, as income is increasing, as fuel price increases, fuel consumption, income is increasing, fuel consumption is also rising. This shows that as price rises, fuel consumption rises and income tends to rise. And this suggests that demand for fuel in Nigeria is influenced not only by price but also by purchasing power. So the strong price consumption correlation proves that higher prices increases demand. Although this correlation may reflect wider economic conditions, inflation, and income effects. In the trend analysis, there's evidence that over the year, fuel price increases and decreases. It was stable around 0.40 kobo between 1986 and 1989. It rose moderately in 1990 and 1991. There was a major jump increase in fuel price that followed in 1992 and 1993. Fuel price then remained unchanged at 11 naira from 1994 to 1998. Another increase started in 1999, continued through 2003. So price stabilized at 65 naira from 2006 to 2011. A sharp increase occurred in 2012. Price dropped in 2015, then rose again in 2016, and the most extreme increase in price occurred in 2023, rising to 1,150.3 naira in 2024. Looking at fuel consumption, actually, consumption rose strongly in 1990 and 1992. that is 1993, 1994, and 1995. Consumption fluctuated afterward. For example, it increased in 2000, but decreased in 2006. A major increase occurred in 2010 and 2011. Following the 2012 price hike, consumption dropped in 2012. From 2016 to 2024, consumption remained relatively stable in 2016 and in 2024. So when you compare this movement, you realize that the price increase between 1992 and 1993 in fuel, consumption fell just slightly in 1993. In 2004, price rose significantly, but consumption decreased. In 2012, price increased heavily, while consumption dropped notably. In 2003, despite an extreme price increase, consumption only fell slightly. This shows that consumption responds weakly compared to price. And when consumption responds weakly to the increase in price, we say the price elasticity of demand for that group is inelastic. So, therefore, the summation in this study is that as price of fuel is increasing in Nigeria, consumption remains stable. That is, the change in consumption as price of fuel increases is insignificant. So there's a large proportional change in fuel price, and the change in fuel consumption is lower compared to the large change in fuel price. So we can conclude. So, and this takes us to the conclusion that fuel demand is substantially price inelastic in Nigeria. Thus, Nigerian fuel demand has been highly inelastic, and its pronounced changes has been driven more by the income, expectations, and structural dependence rather than price. The study recommends the need to streamline social control of fuel price. So I want to believe that this is what government realize, and as such, they believe that market mechanisms should be allowed to determine fuel price. So, but rather than looking inward, by putting our refinery into shape, they are allowing the market to dictate the price. And this has caused economic hardship in many climes, particularly in the lower and middle class category of the populace. So, government have realized that even as the prices of fuel is increasing, so the demand for fuel is stable or rises slowly. So, as such, they are not so much concerned about the hardship that is being created by this increase in fuel. So, we now recommend to the government there's a need. Even when you are allowing the price mechanism to determine the price, you must institute a social control mechanism to ensure that the price changes is stabilized, because this has implications on investment and welfare of the people. The study also recommends that there's a need for market-based pricing with targeted intervention. We can rechannel the subsidy savings to essential farm produce, transport subsidy, and viable alternative means of energy. So, what makes the price elasticity to be inelastic? One reason is the income. The income of the people is expanding. Another reason is the unavailability of viable alternative substitutes. Government should look into how to make the coal source of energy to be functional. They should look into how to make the CNG to be functional, and all other viable alternative source of energy so that the firm can operate with ease even amidst changes in price of oil. Thank you. God bless you.
We appreciate Dr. TORIOLA with a standing ovation and a round of applause. Now we stand up to appreciate Dr. TORIOLA.